Right. Hello and welcome, everybody. My name is Martha Alter Hines. And I have the amazing privilege and honor to be with Pam Gregory today. Thank you, Pam.
Thank you, Martha. It's a joy to be with you. And I love the work you're doing. It's very special, very unique. Thank you.
Well, I want to start out by saying some things that you're probably, in all of your humility, you might even have a hard time believing, but I feel like I'll speak for myself, and I think I'm speaking for hundreds of thousands of people, and probably, honestly, at this point, millions of people. So I feel like it needs to be said. Um, so just speaking from my own experience, I think introducing you is not even necessary, but um, I will just say, in my own life, you have held this role that I don't think you're necessarily conscious of, that relates very much to the topic that we're going to be discussing today. And so, as I've mentioned to you, I used to be a social worker. I used to work in a very, very intense job working with trauma and children and all of that. And 6 years ago, I had an experience where a circle of 8 beings came to me and told me I was going to need to leave social work and start channeling and, launch into what it is I do now. So that's what happened. And it was around that time, I think I came across you. And you've changed my life in so many ways without knowing it. But the one thing that you consistently seem to have, the role you play for me, which I'm guessing is true for many, many people, is what I'm asked to do in my work now it's this, the overarching theme is living the one light, right? It's holding space for us to come back into a remembering of ourselves as the light that we are, the earth that we are, the cosmos that we are, etc. And so there are many, many times when I'm doing this work, where I can feel like, in a sense, it's a little bit scary to come out in the world with this part of myself and all of it, and it can get really easy to dim my own light, I guess you could say. And I will think of you, or I'll watch a video, or I'll somehow connect with you in some way, and it's energetically, again, I don't think you're intentionally doing any of these things, but energetically what happens for me is it's like the light and the energy I experience of you, it's almost like a hook, like a coat hanger hook that just hooks me straight back up into source light. Boom. Immediately.
That is a huge gift, Martha, and I'm not aware of it, but I'm truly, truly grateful. I honestly am. I'm deeply touched by that, and thank you, thank you. And if that applies to anybody else out there, well, gosh, yes, I feel very honored. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And I feel, and again, on an energy body level, I just get this sense from you unintentionally of, no, anchor up in the light. Don't dim your light. Keep going, just keep doing it. And that's, there's no one else in the world who plays that role for me. There are other amazing, super supportive beings, of course, in existence for me, but I just want to honor that role that you do play for me. And
Yeah, I really appreciate that, Martha. Thank you so much. Really, that's improved my day enormously.
Wonderful. Yeah, so relating to that, what I would love to discuss with you in whatever way feels right for you is your relationship with the light. And I would also love to segue at some point in this conversation to the topic of becoming Homo Luminous ones. This is something, that Heather Ensworth and I have talked about a little bit just on the side. And it's coming up very powerfully in a free series I'm holding out called the Wholeness Way series. And it's going to be the topic of week 4 of this series. And it feels like there's something, something, even in all your humility, there's a a little divine puzzle piece, that's meant to come through you. That's what it feels like to me. And so just in your simplicity of being who you are, yeah, I would love to open that conversation. And we can start wherever you feel called to start, but one place would be, I'm curious, how would you describe your relationship with the light?
Wow, it's honestly it's really simple. I don't have a ceremony, a ritual, a goddess. I'm somebody who loves nature, and um, through my life, on a personal level, I have known a great deal of darkness for many many decades in my life, and the solution for me was always nature and animals. And I would go to the woods with my dog or borrow somebody else's dog. It's always got to be a dog in it. And I would just really look at nature from the eyes of a young child of 3 or 4 years old. And I haven't lost that. I just look at the trees and the light coming through the trees, and I can sense that electrical, shimmering life force, particularly in springtime where everything is just translucent, everything is just lit up. And I just go, wow, nature is so beautiful and so amazing. I can just feel that energy. And I don't have any sophistication in really talking in a clear way to the plants and the trees, but I absolutely know that's coming. And I've got favorite trees that I go and hug and connect to, as many many people do. But I've got one of my favorite walks is through the woods, and I've mentioned it in one or two videos, and I go down over a stream, and this stream is one of the best known in Europe for dragonflies. And the dragonflies come down, and their wings are absolutely iridescent, with colors and reflecting the light. And I walk alone, except with the dog, and I can just sit there just like a 3-year-old
Mm.
and just feel the energy from the earth as a living conscious being. And as I say, I've never lost that, but that's always been my kind of go-to. I do it every day, and heaven knows we've had some rain in England over the last year. I mean, heaven knows, but still, even in those very grey days, I can feel that light coming through. And it's coming through at a higher level, a faster level, a higher level. Now, whether that's because the earth is moving through the photon belt, whether it's also a reflection of the heightened solar activity with all the solar flares, peak of solar cycle 25, as many of you know, whether it's that, or our own evolution as human beings, that we're able to connect and able to perceive finer forms of light. I think it's a whole combination of all of those, but we know that we're moving from being carbon bodies to more crystalline. And so there's a constant feedback loop with the cosmos, that as everything is lightening up in us, we can see more in our outer reality, because the inner is the outer, isn't it? And the outer is the inner. And so I think it's a whole combination of that. But it feels fast, it feels speedy, it feels thrilling, it feels just full of love.
Mm.
It's full of a kind of radiant presence in a way that I almost start to lose vocabulary for. I haven't got the words, but there's a radiant presence, there's a sentience, there's a love in that light that feels incredibly powerful. And you know I did a video a few months ago called The Power of the Invisible, and it was all about the light. It was all because we know that everything is born from energy. Everything is, but we just haven't been very conscious of it. We just kind of blundered our way randomly through our days and created by default. But we're becoming more aware as we move towards more Aquarian energy, that everything is energy and frequency, and everything is created by that light. And it was interesting. I know you've talked to Dr. Jude Currivan recently, but she has talked about this. And in fact, I have a couple of friends who are very psychic, who can see that when we have clear intention and we're in love, we are literally creating this architecture of light in the plasma. We're creating it as the kind of architectural foundations of what we then go on to manifest. So it's all about the light, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the Wholeness Way series, the again, there's 3 weeks already, and the in the third week, actually a big part of what, it's all channeled, right? So in the third week, a big part of what came through was reconnecting ourselves to the light, the crystalline light grid of existence throughout all of time, all of space, and how that, and what's so fascinating is, yeah, I mean, that's a whole topic in and of itself, but in this Living the One Light series that I'm channeling, the 7th book is going to be called The Crystals Speak. And I don't get the sense it's about crystals. I get the sense it's about the crystalline layer, the crystalline structures of existence, basically. And the way I get shown the role of that is that it is that crystalline structure is maybe a like a prism that can help us refract ourselves back into the light that we are, if that makes sense.
Beautiful. And that suggests that multidimensionality that's coming in.
Oh, definitely. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
So, and it's so interesting, Martha, because in those very simple Sunday meditations that a lot of people joining, and that's not a very original idea because people are doing this all over the world. But I like to think the people that follow my work are on a similar frequency, so it's a family frequency. And the number of people that play back to me that bang, as soon as we start, they can see this web of light all over the earth that's growing brighter and stronger every single week. And isn't that thrilling? We are just joined together with intention and doing that, connecting with our hearts and doing that all for free. And I feel it too. I feel these footprints that we're creating so everyone can follow. And that's, not a kind of better than statement at all. We're all on our journey, but it's creating this stronger and stronger web of light, which has energy, which has this vortex. I always feel this vortex like the Sufi dancers coming together and spinning their light and it getting stronger. And, it's just a tsunami of love every week. And that's what's so exciting. And it is helping us to access this multidimensionality. And we know that our 24th chromosome is coming back online after 200,000 years. And that is the chromosome that connects us to our multidimensionality in the stars. And so we're moving into this very different era where all of this density that we've known in our lives and the kind of logic and 3D linear time, and it's all going to fall away. And in one sense, that can be quite destabilizing because, where do we find our footing? But in another sense, if you can ride those waves of light like a windsurfer, it's absolutely thrilling. And so many of us are feeling this sense of momentum, excitement, more love, more light. And of course, if you're in fear, you think we're all in la la land because you can't see any of it because it's invisible. But we absolutely know that that's where creation begins.
Yeah, it's just the truth. In my mind, I keep seeing Celestia on the North Node right now.
Yeah.
I'm curious. Yeah. Do you connect Celestia with what we're discussing?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, Kelly Hunter's done so much wonderful research on this, and she was talking initially. I was electrified when I first heard her talk about the dwarf planets. That's what got me started on this.
Yeah.
And she talked about Celestia as the reflection of the sunlight and the moonlight on the sea, and I started to think, gosh, I think that's about the photonic light, this very high frequency diamond light that we're going through. And because Celestia is also mermaid energy, I'm really connecting her back to ancient Lemuria and new Lemuria that's emerging. And of course, they were so connected to the light. I mean, they built light temples out of crystals, didn't they, at the top of mountains, because they knew the top of mountains, that's where the strongest energy vortex for healing would be. And it was just kind of wooden poles with a bit of canvas, but studded with crystals to refract the light. And that's where people went to get healed. So I think this whole I haven't got to the end of this rabbit hole yet, and maybe you have, Martha, and can help me out. But this connection with Salacia, the light, the reflected light, the photon belt, our upgrade into light equals love, the water, because the water is just condensed light that holds all the information, the connection back to ancient Lemuria, because we haven't lost all those memories, we still carry them with us in the water via the light. And that is birthing this new Lemuria that I think will emerge really as ancient but new land masses that will have that frequency, and they will be incredibly fertile. I mean, they've discovered one gigantic mountain range, as you know, off the coast of Chile, incredibly fertile with new sea creatures. This is Homer, this is Salacia. It's the dwarf planets blending together to give us this promise of a new life of light and love that we've never known before.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Kelly and I have had several conversations about Salacia, and also I think of Varda and Manwë, also specifically Varda, being on the galactic center, and all of she brings in another something. There's something there with her about the light coming through, and so much there.
She placed the stars, didn't she? It said in the creation myth that she placed the stars in the sky and set them on their course. So again, we're back to the light, and of course the stars sort of ejaculate water all the time for us. So the water that we're receiving on the earth, some of it is 4.5 billion years old, or Dr. Jukaran said even older than the earth itself, and that all carries memory, and that water is condensed light. There's something in all of this that is that unique puzzle piece that if you discover what it is, Martha, if you can but there's something that's thrilling about this.
I'm feeling called to bring in a piece that it definitely is at my edge of comfort in terms of sharing publicly, but I'm being told to, so I will. And I have shared about this a little bit with my community, but I'm really curious to get your thoughts. So in addition, when you're talking about the land masses in re-emerging, and the relationship with the crystalline realities and all of that, another component that has been coming through for me for many years now, and I've only just started telling people about it in the last year, is I have had a powerful set of experiences with here. I live in Santa Barbara, California, and it's paradise, literal paradise, and just incredible natural mountains and ocean and all of it. Okay, so long story short, several years ago we had a horrible forest fire. At that point, it was the worst forest fire of California, and it burned the side. I mean, huge swaths of land, but in this one area where I go quite often, it burned the whole mountainside there. And what was really interesting, though, after that burn happened, I started getting visited by these, what you could call inner mountain beings. So it's this, so I have relationships with fairies and gnomes and ocean creatures and, you name it. But this was the first time I had ever experienced inner mountain beings. And so again, I'm going on a limb here. It sounds a little bit cuckoo, but it's my truth. So I'm just going to name it. So what would happen is, yeah, I figure it's not out there for you. So what would happen is these beings started taking me, in my mind, not actually literally, but taking me into their home in the mountain. And they have this whole entire world that is a crystalline light world. And so they started showing me all kinds of realities about that dimension. And I would say actually multiple dimensions inside the earth. that are these crystalline dimensions of the inner earth. And what they've been telling me for years is that they eventually need me. I think it's part of what's going to channel through when I channel the crystals speak. But they've been really insistent that I'm going to need to share their knowledge, essentially. So bottom line, what a lot of the spirit beings who I have relationship with keep saying is that we naturally as humans we usually are in constant communication, constant dialogue, constant community with these beings, because in a sense they are us, we are them. And they hold knowledge, ancient, powerful, needed knowledge that the earth needs now, the world needs now, the human world needs now. But they have been hiding because we didn't respect them. We, violated them and violated their trust. And so they've been waiting kind of on the edge, and now they're getting more and more loud, more and more insistent that it's time to start speaking publicly about it. And I know lots and lots of people also around the world have these kinds of experiences. But I don't know, does that spark anything for you? Is there anything that
Yeah,
comes
I
up?
think it's I have absolutely no doubt that that exists, because so many people personally like you have actually told me about their experiences where they go into meditation, they go down and kind of underneath the mantle of the earth, and that's where they connect with these beings. And yeah, as you say, there's a whole world there, a whole world of knowledge, a thriving ecosystem, and very high intelligence,
Yes.
and ancient knowledge. So this again, I think, takes us to the dwarf planets, doesn't it?
Yes.
It partly takes us to Pluto. I think it partly takes us to Sedna,
Mm.
and but it's also the ancient knowledge of the dwarf planets, because all of the dwarf planets I've looked at so far have this deep, deep connection to the earth.
Oh,
And there's something profound about that. And I think that enough of us have to come together with honor and respect to hold that space. And clearly you've been specially selected for this, Martha, to hold that space, to allow that knowledge to come through. But absolutely, this is the time. In fact, somebody just arrived at my door a couple of weeks ago who I knew was coming. He wasn't just a stray person. And he came in, he said, hi, I'm Arcturian. And I said, that's perfectly normal in my world, come on in. And he talked about those experiences. So I think it's coming into our consciousness more and more. So it isn't just out there, it's also in the earth. We have so much to discover. So it's a sense of you needing to connect with other people who are starting to have these feelings and come together as a tribe
yeah.
in love and trust, and see what you can elicit. But if you set a clear intention that this is for the highest good of all, highest good of the earth, then that should come forwards. That's absolutely amazing. That's so wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's this tricky balance, of course, for me, I think for all of us um, of holding the truth of it, and also doing it in a way that is grounded, stays very grounded, and also and is deeply honoring of these beings and honoring of ourselves and honoring of each other. That's so I was born on a full moon in Virgo, if that gives you a sense of, I've got the Pisces, but I've got very strong Virgo too.
I have
And
no earth, so
oh, okay.
the days are quite hard, no practical skills at all. Well, you're perfect. You're anchored. It's beautiful, that Pisces Virgo
Mm,
opposite.
mm. Well, yeah. Yeah. So yeah, so I keep coming back to this needs to be shared, but it needs to be done in a deeply rooted way. We're beings of earth, we're Gaians, like Jude says, and in addition to beings of the cosmos, and the earth is part of the cosmos. So we don't want to just fly off to Never Never Land. We're here for a reason. Anyway, yeah.
And of course, Virgo is very connected to the ancient wisdom of the earth, isn't it? The ancient keepers, all the natural plant medicines, etc. And there's something so ancient with that. Gosh, that's absolutely thrilling. And to some extent, you know, this was Tolkien's work, wasn't it? And his work about the creation myth and Silmarillion, etc. Are you feeling there's any particular dwarf planet, maybe Sedna, that's linking with that? I mean, Sedna is very much the seas, but nevertheless, it's very deep, isn't it? And creating a metamorphosis. So are there other dwarf planets that are resonating with you for this, Martha?
Well, I keep thinking of the Lelea Kuhanua, that Oort cloud being that you and I have discussed a little bit through email. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, if you have any thoughts about that, I'd be really curious. But I absolutely, once I dropped into learning about that being and its relationship with Sedna and its relationship with Hawaii. I mean, it's named, you know, it's a Hawaiian name and all of it. One thing that came through for me, I think I'm still really wanting to hold space for a collective remembering of what this being is. But one thing that definitely powerfully came through for me was a sense of Lelea Kuhanua has an orbit that is 3 times Sedna's orbit. So so Sedna's orbit, as you know, is half of a why am I blanking on the word? Half of a precessional cycle.
Yes,
And
11,400 years. Yeah.
exactly. And then Lelea Kuhanua's orbit is approximately 36,000 years, right? So it's actually 1.5 times the precessional cycle. That's a really interesting connection to me. And Lelea Kuhanua is named after the not the bird, but the quality of the Kolea bird, who is a bird who is born in the Arctic of Alaska, just like Sedna, then flies to Hawaii on a nonstop 3-day flight and has a
It's
life,
a tiny bird, isn't it? It's a tiny bird.
yeah, yeah. And then somehow, you know, knows how to then go back to Alaska. So it has this orbit, you could say, between Sedna's homeland and one area that we could consider Lemuria, right? Or connected to Lemuria. And so something that definitely has arisen for me is the sense of, I've gotten a vision of the Lelea Kuhanua orbit, which is so long, 36,000 years. When I have tuned into, I call it a her, I don't want to genderize it, but anyway, when I tune into her being, what I feel and pretty immediately is she says, I'm not just where I am, I'm my whole orbit, right? Like I'm the whole elliptical oval orbit, and I'm holding space for everything. And I'm holding space for all of you. So, and then what I see is within that, it feels almost like a hula hoop. And within that hula hoop, then I see and I feel what Keone Hanalei talks about, the Lemuria. To him, I don't want to speak for him, but my understanding is what he says is that it's really also what may just emerge is our own frequency will re-emerge, right? And then these land masses, or the whatever is we're meant to remember, will then emerge out of the sea, or out of the sea of our consciousness, or whatever you want to, however you want to describe it. And so what I see is within that orbit of Lelea Kuhanua that we're being held to let this quote unquote Lemuria, or the raise in consciousness, to rise itself all together as a collective.
Yeah, that's thrilling. It really is, Martha. And when Keone was speaking with Heather Ensworth, our good friend, I remember him saying that all those land masses of ancient Lemuria are still there. It's because humanity fell from love that we can't see them, but you know, they're just in another dimension. But once we kind of reconnect to love at a higher level, we will see them very easily. They're
Yeah.
just there in another dimension. And and that's a very exciting concept indeed.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you come back to love as always being the answer to these things. But that is fascinating about 1.5 processional cycles, because again, we have so many markers at this time of the end of the old world and the beginning of something that is very different, completely unique for humanity.
Yeah. And what's so another piece that's so fascinating about the whole thing is that so Leleakuhanua has a 36,000 year orbit. Sedna has this 11,400 year orbit, and they both are going to be having their perihelion 2 years apart. So
Incredible.
and the balloons.
Incredible.
Yeah.
So
One
perihelion, for people who don't understand, you know,
yeah,
closest to our sun.
right. So they're both coming back. The closest they get to us, 2 years. I mean, they're both here. They're both here with us now, essentially. And
Yeah.
so, you know, I don't know. It feels like they're in a dance with each other. I think gravitationally they are, but energetically too. It feels like their purposes somehow talk to each other or play in with each other. I don't have answers about that, but
So isn't it interesting that Sedna is about the, you know, deep, deep Arctic waters, you know, way, way down. And Lilikunua, is that how you
it
pronounce
Leleaku Hanua. Yeah.
it? It takes some practice. It is also about something that's very deep in the earth. So the profundity of both of those coming together is weaving some kind of magic for humanity that we have to connect back to.
Mm, 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 mm. Wow. Yeah. I'm gonna be meeting with Keone in a couple of weeks too, so I'm really curious to get his perspective. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, wow. I hadn't put that
I
together.
think you are on a fabulous detective hunt.
Yeah, all
And
together.
it's a special assignment for you.
We're all in it together. Um, great. Well, I think there's one other thing I would love to bring in if that's okay, and it actually does relate to the Kuiper Belt as also. Um, so when we're talking about light, of course, you mentioned that in your life you also have experienced quite a bit of dark. And something I've been feeling into this, so we're recording this in early August 2024. And for people watching, years in the future, this still, I think, applies, this theme still applies. But in terms of the astrology right now, I've been really drawn to right now the fact that the nodes of the moon are squaring that grouping in Capricorn, right? The Ixion, Quaoar, Pholus, and Ceres all together. um, and yeah, I'm curious to get your take on that, because one thing I'm feeling in it is uh, that we are in this time of great remembering. We are in this time of re-becoming the wholeness that we are, or remembering the fact that we are the wholeness of everything, the light, etc. But that grouping being squared by the nodes of the moon right now feels to me like a grounding reminder that we absolutely have to, there's still layers that still have to be released of the karmic trauma and, all of that. And Heather Ensworth and I both have this background as therapists working with trauma. That was the thing I specialized in as a therapist, right? And so we all know, whether or not we've been therapists, that when there's been trauma, it's our energy bodies and our physical bodies and our emotional bodies absolutely have to process these things, right? It can't just be a spiritual bypass and we're all of a sudden fine, because if we do that, it will come back around. Um, and so, yeah, so it's feeling to me like, on the one hand, we're being held so powerfully, so magically for all of this reemerging and remembering and all of it. And at the same time, collectively and individually, personally, we need to honor and meet what it is we're processing in a conscious way. I don't know if you have any thoughts of any of
Yes,
that.
I think I think that is absolutely vital. And I think that's going to be happening really from right now. If we look at the astrology for the rest of the year and into the early months of next year, that's when all of that individual and collective darkness is going to come into the light, and it has to be seen. It fully has to be seen. And that's starting to happen already. But it's very interesting, isn't it? The that configuration, because Ceres is, I think, at the moment, pretty much all going into late August, September. It's exactly to the degree squaring the nodal axis. And if we think of the myth of Ceres, you know, her daughter was captured, Persephone taken down to Hades, you know, underground in the dark for 6 months. Again, there's this underground aspect, and then she comes back up to the light again, you know, stronger, wiser. Yeah, so she's a very big part of us seeing the light individually and collectively.
Oh,
So,
Pam.
so,
See there.
so
Mm.
that's part of it too. And I love also the that Quawa Ixion combination, because they are both about really going your own way. You know, the highest expression of Ixion is going your own way in simple bliss and joy, going beyond the, you know, the mass culture, as it were, and finding your own way. And Kwawa is very much about joy, singing and dancing your way back into a higher frequency to then manifest. But what's fascinating as well, as part of that whole configuration, you know, that cardinal grand cross which is coming up at eclipse time, Maki becomes conjunct. I think it's at the solar eclipse, it becomes conjunct that eclipse exactly. Now, the whole myth of Maki, as we know, was about Easter Island being completely ravaged and decimated by the visiting sailors who brought disease and chopped down the trees and introduced rats all over the. And at one point, I believe it's historically true that Easter Island was down to 111 residents. But because they understood how to work with natural cycles, there's this huge regeneration that took place back to a thriving ecosystem. So Maki is very much about regeneration. Also Homer, you know, in her fire goddess aspect, she was said to birth the 8 islands of Hawaii. That's, you know, bringing new land up. And the myth of Ceres with Persephone is also about this going deep and then bringing back up to the light. So there's this, you know, it's what you've been talking about, Martha, really, having to go deep to get the understanding to then bring it back to the light and a higher frequency. We can't do it without that deep dive. Now, that deep dive, you know, in some sense is physical, but it's certainly psychological and emotional and spiritual, as you've said, and you know so well as a psychotherapist. And that's the process we're in right now. And for some of us, it might be a little bit bumpy as we go through that, but it's absolutely necessary for us to come back to wholeness. We can't exist as a wholeness, either as a single unit or as one consciousness, without that process.
Yeah.
And it's accelerated. That's my feeling as well. It's accelerated as we go through this. And gosh, astrology helps. It's helped. I don't know who I'd be without astrology. Honestly, I don't know what my life would have been, but it helps you so much to navigate this, to have these archetypes of meaning, these pillars of meaning that you can kind of weave the tapestry of your life around to get some sense out of what may have seemed chaotic for you. And therefore, I believe that we as astrologers are going to be called forward even more to the forefront to kind of explain it all as we go through these very intense transformations and ultimately the metamorphosis for humanity, which is completely a unique evolutionary jump. But
Yeah.
you are so right, Martha. We can't do it without the deep dive and seeing the darkness.
Mm. Great. Okay, I think my last question, if that's all right. Um, what what is your perspective on this term Homo luminous ones, or re-becoming Homo luminous beings? What does that mean to you or not mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, I probably bored people to death because I did have that kind of 30 seconds of a super sharp dream. For those of you who haven't heard it, it was right at the end of the night. And in the dream, I walked into this empty room that was just full of pink and peach sparkly diamond light. And there was nothing in the room apart from a long mirror. And I walked up to the mirror and looked in the mirror, and I was just pure light. I was just pure light. My eyes were just filled with light. It was just incredible. And I started to levitate. And then the alarm went off, and I said very rude words because I just wanted to stay in that vision. But that was a promise for everyone. And I think that is our future selves as humanity. In fact, because there's no time, is there? And it's the eternal now, that we are already the light body. We just have to, in this reality, through our meditation, our singing, our dancing, our contemplation, our being in nature, we have to find ways to access what is already us at a higher dimension. That's already there. There is no past, no future. And what that does to astrology, heaven knows. I'll just retire. But it's right there, right now.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, last night I channeled the first, so in this Wholeness Way series, there, so far 3 weeks, and now I'm going to be doing this 4th week on this theme of remembering ourselves as Homo Luminous beings. And so in each of the weeks, there's an initial channeled guided experience, and then there are 5 daily reminders that kind of build on that. So last night I channeled the initial video for that Homo Luminous week. And what's so fascinating that came through was essentially the spirit, these light beings had us wrapped in a golden web, like a cocoon. That's what it was. And inside this golden light cocoon, they said essentially, you're like a caterpillar who has come into this cocoon, and now it's time for you to dissolve into the goop and into those imaginal cells. And then it was so endearing. Then they had these little light beings, almost like little gnomes, but light beings, who came over to our own individual cocoon of light. And they were, once we had dissolved fully in this cocoon, their job, the job of these little light beings, is to just very gently just take out any pieces of, karma or trauma or whatever that's no longer serving, right? That we're still the cells of that caterpillar, us, as you could say, 3D us, or more carbon us, whatever words you want to put to it. But then we are now dissolving into the imaginal cells of what we're turning into, what we're becoming, right? But there's this process right now, it feels like, of just very gently and carefully, one at a time, taking these little cells out that aren't needed, or not even cells. It's more like energies that just don't serve anymore. It's fine that they were there. They served a purpose, and they just don't anymore. So yeah, it was very sweet, very cute, actually, these beings. And then I don't know yet what's coming through in the following daily reminders for that week, but it was really interesting that was the metaphor, or that was the visual that was given. And yeah,
That's so beautiful. I mentioned in one of my videos, and I wish I could remember his name. I mentioned his name in the video. Michael, someone was talking in his video about the caterpillar cells and the butterfly cells, and they are actually separate. Do you remember that? And
keep going.
yeah, and they're actually separate, and the caterpillar cells resist the butterfly cells, but it gets to the point where the butterfly cells exist in such numbers that it's kind of irresistible. But what the resistance of the caterpillar cells do is, it is one organic process, because it's not that it's a separation or a fight, it strengthens the evolutionary purpose of the butterfly cell. So it's one organic process. And what we're in at the moment, I sense, is it's like a time capsule. It's like a time capsule that you have in acorns and in caterpillars, that there comes a moment where that metamorphosis happens, and it's unstoppable. Oak trees never go back to be acorns. Butterflies never go back to be caterpillars. And we are in that evolutionary impulse right now because divine intelligence has timed it, that this is the time that's meant to happen. And I think we're in the chrysalis, we're in the mush of it all, but we're going to fly. It's that beautiful poem, come to the edge. No, we're afraid, no, come to the edge. No, we'll fall. Come to the edge, he said, and he pushed them and they flew. And I always get goosebumps with that. And that's where we are at as emerging butterflies, because our future existence is going to be unimaginable compared to that of a caterpillar. I mean, a caterpillar can move how many inches in a day? Versus, and if you said to a caterpillar one day you're going to be able to fly from plant to plant and have all these colors and flowers and go wherever you like and have all this freedom, and the caterpillar would say, don't be silly, I can barely move 3 inches in a day. So it's that big a jump in terms of where we're headed, and that's why we start to lose vocabulary, I think, because we've never lived it. There's no rehearsal, but we're in it. We're in it with no rehearsal, and we're being launched into a higher state of being, which is much more multidimensional, much more homoluminous. And people like you with your work and your very fine perception, your beautiful fine perception, Martha, really leading the way in this as we kind of blunder through to get to where we start flying, and that's very close indeed. I think that's starting to happen right now.
Yeah, I agree. Amazing. Thank you so much, Pam. Is there anything else you feel called to add, or?
No, I just think what's most important, and I bang on about that, what's most important is your state of being. That is your absolutely top priority, because everything cascades from that. And if you can stay in a state of peace and love, you actually infect others with that energy. Unknowingly. And this really comes from the work with water, Veda's beautiful work with water, Victor Schallberger, that when you are in proximity with a lower state of water, you upgrade that lower state to something more structured, more beautiful, more natural looking. I mean, Veda's doing some beautiful work with this. So if we can stay in that very positive state of love and joy and peace and compassion, gratitude, we are automatically, we don't have to work at it, we are automatically infecting other people with that higher state of being.
Yeah.
It's an automatic, and we can infect lots of people, and I think we can probably just do it online, because it's to do with intention as well. Simply setting the intention will do that. In fact, Veda's just posted something on Facebook this morning, which was intriguing, how just setting the intention will change the state of the water, tap water, municipal, grotty water. So we are at the brink of understanding what powerhouses of creation we are, for free, sitting at home alone, just by keeping that higher state of being. We are infecting the world with that higher state of being. And so it's lighting the touch paper for love. It's something I think that we just haven't fully grasped yet. And something came through me years ago about, the light is the game changer and love is the checkmate.
Oh.
And I think that's absolutely where we are right now. The light is the game changer and love is the checkmate.
Amazing.
And that's
yeah, I'll just add one thing, which is, so again, with this Wholeness Way series, the spirit world is similar. It's very similar to what you're saying. I was discussing this with Jude also. What they're saying is that they're so adamant and almost crying, you know. They've made this whole series again for free because they're saying the one thing we need you to do, the one thing is to remember yourself as wholeness. Because if you're trying to operate sort of like a car with its wheels misaligned, right? And we're here as beings on the planet right now. Like anybody listening to this, almost guaranteed, is a being who's here to help in some way. And each in our own unique ways. And nothing is too small and nothing is too big, you know, all of that, right? But our intention is to help. Our sole purpose is to help. And if we're trying to operate from this, still from the illusion of separation on an energy body structure level, it's again similar to like a car with its wheels out of alignment, and we're trying to move so we can help, but we're wobbly and it's going to be very hard to move. But if we're able to just get into that literal remembering the reality that we are wholeness, it doesn't mean denying the hurt and the trauma and the things happening in the world that are still very, very difficult, absolutely. But if we're just we can get our tires aligned literally, then how much more efficient and smooth can we be, you know, as we move to do the help that we're here to do. So it seems like it's basically the same thing that you're saying.
And that's, you know, if we work on our inner state, that's one thing to focus on that's simple, that every single person can do for free.
Yeah.
One single thing. And all it takes is that focus, as Paul Levy, who I love his writing, said, you know, our focus is the superpower. So it isn't that we have to fix a million problems, because heaven knows the world's in a mess out there.
Yeah.
But that's not what's going to help us. It's going to scatter our power. Come back to that inner state, and that's what helps us jump to those higher levels of being.
Yeah, exactly. And get really clear on what is mine to do and what is not mine to do, because 99.999% of those things out there are not mine, you know, are specific to do. Even though we would love to help everything. But right, just that is so simple and exactly spot on. Yeah.
But I think, Martha, that I know your work is doing this, and I've said this many times for my work. If we can get people, and you know, heavens, I have no particular skill at this, but if in some simple way we can help to raise the consciousness to a level where these horrors are absolutely unthinkable.
Yes.
It's unthinkable to hurt another living being. You know, I grieve if a tree falls over. You know, I really feel grief or is chopped down, or let alone animals, let alone people and children. And, you know, there's this real feeling of grief. So if we were all at that state of being where any injury was absolutely unimaginable, then we solve a whole bunch of problems much more quickly.
Exactly. And I think even on the tiniest levels, when we're in that state of being, in that wholeness that we are, in that light, in all of what you're describing, then even our interactions with people closest to us are going to revolutionize, right? And we know that has this humongous ripple effect through everything.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
You change and everything around you changes, all the dynamics of your relationship, your whole reality. Absolutely.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again, Pam. So much. And
I've loved it.
yeah, I just speaking again for myself, but speaking again for I think millions of people at this point, you know, I know you're humble. I know you're incredibly humble, which is one of the reasons I love you and appreciate you so much. And so, but in addition, you know, you really, really are in my world, a keeper of the light. And yeah, I just can't thank you enough. So
Bless you, Martha. That lands with me very deeply and lovingly. Thank you so much. I've loved this conversation. We've gone over the speed bumps a few times and it's been great fun, and just sending love to everybody out there. And thank you so much for listening.